So you're here. I guess we're doing this go and grab a seat right there. Ooh, you disappear into the couch. So tell us first, Howard, just a little bit about your personal background before we get into what we're going to be talking about today.
I have a degree
Hold
in...
it close to you.
Close. I have a degree in business from USC.
All right, you got some USC fans.
Right.
That was a positive thing. They weren't heckling you.
Right.
They weren't heckling
Go
heckling
USC,
you, Howard.
right.
He was scared. He was like, what? You don't like me?
I went to a Bruce Springsteen concert once, and I heard boos all the time. And, all right, misheard that one, too. Grew up in Los Angeles, was born near the La Brea Tar Pits, was raised near the Beverly Center when it was oil wells, moved to play in Beverly High on the field, on the girls' field where there were, guys played on the girls' field too, where there were also oil wells. My first major job was in Century City at the back of the oil wells, and next job was in El Segundo for 15 years, surrounded by oil wells and the Hyperion water treatment plant and so forth. And so this leads us to a background of exposure to environmental contaminants.
Right. So, okay, that's an interesting story right there, because you're saying that, and this is a really interesting thing for those of us concerned about our health. There's sort of a couple different reasons why we're trying to understand why, people get sick. And of course, environmental toxins, which we're all exposed to. I'm sure you've seen recently some of these studies about microplastics and how much microplastics is in the products that we're all consuming every day, all of us. So we do have this sort of theory or these challenges we're facing with environmental toxins, and it's so novel, we don't really even know how detrimental these are to our bodies. We're just kind of discovering them, and that kind of leads us to this book, right? So you came up with a physician partner, I believe, Howard, this idea of MMM theory, and it says right here on the book, a new paradigm in medicine. So just first tell us, what does MMM theory stand for?
Well, wouldn't want to put that on the cover of the book. It is microbial mucosal milieu, and that would make sure that no one reads the book. The idea behind the book is that the body has natural protective mechanisms against these environmental contaminants that we are all exposed to in our urban environment. And those mechanisms are basically the the immune mechanisms, the inflammatory mechanisms, which are then diagnosed as autoimmune diseases, heart disease, Alzheimer's disease, or in the case where the body is overwhelmed with these contaminants, it's diagnosed as obesity because the body is encapsulating these contaminants in fat.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point. So if you don't really understand how that actually works, right? Why do we put on adipose tissue on the exterior of our body? It's because any toxin that the body is exposed to at the cellular level, you actually take that toxin, your body doesn't know what to do with it. Your liver would have to process it, you would have to excrete it. We don't know what to do with it, so we wrap that in a lipid particle, and then we push it to the exterior of the body. And that's why we develop that fat tissue on the exterior of our body. So really, it's this idea that, we can basically be building that inflammation as we go. And how does that theory, right? Because this, again, is some of this is well known, right? We know that there's some things that create inflammation and that we're all facing. Now, how does that tie into a new theory about this?
Well, medicine tends to diagnose the symptoms of the inflammation and treats the symptoms. Now, the symptoms are actually the body's protective mechanisms against these contaminants. So medicine is stopping the protective mechanism, which is very uncomfortable because I've been through it. But at the same time, now we know the cause of those symptoms, and now we can begin to address protecting against the environmental contaminants and understanding why, and degrading and removing them. Some of the supplements from our company helps in doing that, and we're developing diagnostic tools to help with that also.
Right. And so what you're talking about, from my understanding, as someone who works in the longevity space, is what's being called root cause medicine, right? So we often treat the disease or the disorder as it arises. So we basically have a model now of what's essentially known as reactive health practices, right? So, if you right now go to the doctor and your blood sugar glucose is below a certain level, you're fine, right? Even though you're pre-diabetic, they'll say you're fine. But as soon as you cross that threshold, it's like, okay, now you got type 2 diabetes, now we're going to treat you. But you were developing that, somebody was developing that potentially for decades before it actually
Correct.
crosses that medical threshold to be diagnosed as a disease. So really, we have a twofold problem here. We need to actually go upstream and catch people before they develop the condition. And then if they're already not feeling well, which a lot of people are experiencing right now, so you may not have a disease, but you're kind of like, I know something's wrong, so what do I do? And that, I think, is kind of where this comes in. You can look at a book like this and start to examine, like, what might be the source of my inflammation, my autoimmune condition that maybe isn't that severe. So tell us a little bit around how you're treating that with your company.
You may have heard a discussion about the microbiome, especially in the gut. And the microbiome is an intelligent organ, if you will, comprised of bacteria, which protect our body from these contaminants and allow nutrients to enter the body. Not only does the microbiome exist in our gut, but it also exists in every organ in our body and every stream or flow within our body, such as our vascular system, our lymphatic system. So this microbiome, which is different in each of those organs, we are able to support it and increase its protective capability, and thus protect our body from these environmental contaminants, which are becoming more pervasive in our society.
Right. So basically, this is one of the ideas as well, that our health, we have the capacity for self-healing. I mean, our body is already designed that way, right? If you get a cut, it's not like you have to go see a doctor to heal the cut. The body is going to heal the cut, but you can put something to make sure there's not more bacteria in the cut, or you can do something else to make sure that the environment is there for the body to do its own natural healing. And that's kind of what you're doing with your company that you have.
Probably 90% of the bacteria in our environment, in our body, is beneficial. It's those other few bacteria that are what causes the problem with infections. And as long as you keep the 90% strong, they will be strong enough to overwhelm the detrimental bacteria that we are exposed to occasionally.
And so, Howard, are you also, like a lot of people here, raising money for your company right now to expand what you're doing?
Yes, we have a $2 million note ask at 8.5%, which is a convertible note. And that's how the initial raise is.
And then tell us a little bit more about, like, because I saw you have a big product line. Like, it's actually a very large product line. Tell us a little bit about the product line, what you're doing, who you're serving right now.
We've been in business about 20 years. We are marketing to physicians. We have about 300 physicians who are regular customers, who each have on average 1,000 patients. So we have a reach of about 300,000 people and about 3,000 additional physicians on our emailing list. Our multivitamin is the highest rated practitioner multivitamin in the Comparative Guide to Nutritional Supplements, which is a compendium of analysis of 1,600 multivitamins in North, South, and Central America, as well as you said, roughly 100 products in our product line.
So when 20 years in, you got 350 physicians, you're reaching, over 350,000 people. Are you, if you're in this raise, I know I've heard from a lot of the investors, they're asking about current revenues. Are you allowed to disclose what your current annual revenues are to give people a sense of the idea?
Our revenue this month tripled from the last 12 months anyway, on average. And so we hopefully are hitting that hockey stick in increases in revenue, though we have been running about $1 million a year in the past.
Okay, perfect. And I also understand, for those of you who are interested, you're selling this book here, right, at your booth? People can come and get a copy of this?
I am signing the book, and gosh, we'll probably actually give it away rather than sell it.
Oh, okay. Well, nice. So if you want to get a sense of what Howard's doing and what this theory is, I mean, it's very interesting for those of you who are investors. You can go and, of course, have some time with Howard to talk about their raise, their company, do some due diligence. But for those of you, even just for your own personal health, if you want to understand what's going on in your own body and what's going on in our society around health and how we're developing a lot of these conditions, as you said, there's the hockey stick of autoimmune diseases that have been happening in our world, unfortunately. So before we end, we have a minute or two for any questions from the audience for Howard.
Is this on?
Yeah, it just turned on. Go ahead.
Howard, you're raising capital, and I understand you have a really good client down in Mexico. Maybe you can describe the success she's had, and that along with what you've been working with her for a while, you're actually replicating what she's doing with this incredible success. So you could talk a little bit about her background and success and revenue, and how you're going to actually apply this to your current other doctors. And that's a good way to describe what you're doing with these 300 current doctors leading to the 300 and this exponential growth. If you can explain a little bit about that.
Sure. Thanks for the question, Brad. This person in Mexico is actually a nutritionist. She's not even a doctor. She currently has 1.4 million TikTok followers, also 1.4 million Instagram followers. In Mexico, she's doing about 80,000 products a month in business, part of it through Walmart and part of it through her clinics. She is she is expanding her business into the U.S. We've been supporting her for 15 years, and in the U.S. we are her distribution arm, if you will, where we're creating our products under a Spanish label to market to the Hispanic population in the U.S., and that has been also growing at almost doubling every month this year. And we basically kicked it off at the beginning of this year, kicked off the U.S. program for her at the beginning of this year.
Okay, great. Any other questions for Howard from the audience here? Anyone, anything else you want to know? No?
Howard,
Okay.
Describe to the audience how you've been generating your clients for the last 20 years, and how that might be a guide to some of these other people. Like Clay's company sounds like it's a good fit to partner with. He's with beds and calling on doctors and clinics. Many of your doctors might be a fit for what he has. So you're dealing with consumers, you're dealing with doctors and clinics, and you're already in what, 10 countries?
It's approaching 10.
Right. So
Yes.
There's a lot of overlap here in non-competitive people in this room, where there's some good synergies and partnerships. Would you agree? And maybe describe on some of these things you've got developed right now.
A lot of the people I've been meeting at this conference and the prior Newport Beach Investor Conference have synergistic distribution needs to ours, and we basically attend medical conferences. We are sharing the success of Natalie Marcus, as Brad and I mentioned before, to our other doctors. We have a doctor who has a radio show with 90,000 local listeners, and we will help each of them expand their reach in order to expand our reach and their success and our success, which will mimic it.
All right. So Brad, I know, I think we actually are ahead of schedule. So do we have another presentation, or are we going to move into lunch break now?
Well, the lunch break, we're not taking off.
Okay.
We're going to keep going
just gonna
on.
keep
So
going?
there's no break.
Okay.
We'll stay in the room. just I'll bring this up, that they went through all the lunch being served already. So
Okay.
I just want to make you aware, if you go hunting for that, people already had all the food available.
So come and go at your
Yeah.
own will, I guess. So, okay, well, Howard, people can find him at his booth. We are a little bit ahead of schedule, but thank you for your time. If you have any more questions for Howard, and he's being very generous. I don't know how many, if he has enough copies of these for all of you. So if you do go say hi, you can get a signed copy of his book. Where's your booth, Howard? Where do they find you?
My booth is right outside the door to my left.
Howard also has a sample of his product, and I'd encourage everybody to get this and improve how you feel and start incorporating some of the highest quality supplements on the market right now. So again, thank you very much, Howard.
Okay.
Thank you so
Howard.
much.
All right.